Hello, I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. I would like to issue a warning to other victims and explain in detail how one very insidious form of attack that I've just experienced this morning is being conducted. However, because everything in this video also contains evidence that I would like to state publicly, I'm going to make this entire video under oath, and it's to be understood that the advice I give is based on what I've experienced to the best of my knowledge. So this is using the witness affirmation according to the Oath Act 1978, as it's still legally binding in the UK courts. I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So what happened this morning is a form of attack that I've experienced in the past on other people, but today it's the first time I've experienced it on myself. And also I have, after the event, I found evidence to convince myself that it was due to external interference. And it's because I've now experienced it on my own body and especially on my own mind. I would like to make a statement about that as long as it's fresh in my memory, because it was terrifying, and actually I think it's also highly topical. So what I've actually experienced this morning is that, I've mentioned in the past that there were targeted attempts to break up my marriage and targeted attempts to destabilize us, to introduce either through third-party actors or through interference in our life, extra stresses between my husband and me. The actual COINTELPRO style domestic terrorism campaign that I've been at the mercy of for several years now is enough to break most people. Then the microwave attacks on top of that, the financial sabotage, the absolute incredibly criminal disruption at night. It is essentially it is a psychopathic terror campaign and mutilation campaign that I'm being exposed to. And of course, every single one of my relationships suffers under that. And most importantly, just like the Stasi-Zersetzungsmethod and just like COINTELPRO, which is essentially what this campaign is based on as well, it's the knowledge and the insight from those programs that transpires, because what they're doing is essentially trying to set off one person, really bother, terrorize, mutilate, hurt and harm one person, and over and over in such an insane rate that no one who doesn't understand that it's exactly precisely with that sort of criminality that the intelligence agencies are working with habitually. Unless you know that, you would just not be able to believe a victim. And this is precisely what this entire program is based upon. It is based upon setting off individuals, doing whatever you like with them, be it human experimentation, being, sexual titillation of your agents, cashback if you like, be it the training of your agents or, testing weapons and pharmaceuticals on people. Whatever you want to do, you can do behind the scenes, but meanwhile the target is, the key point is to discredit the target. And the human being has only so many, options. They can speak up to their family, to their partner, to the police. They can try to approach lawyers. And the intelligence agencies put in place mechanisms for every single one of those. So I have now documented the corruption in the British police publicly, what happened when I tried to report a microwave attack on myself. And this is after, already 15 years ago, the German press publishing the fact that people were being attacked inside their own homes. That was 15 years ago. 8 years ago, a British whistleblower came forward and said the intelligence agencies are attacking innocent people with microwave weapons. And microwave weapons having been known about since the 1970s, officially known about. So the fact that, the police behaved how they did when I mentioned microwave weapons indicates that this was not a proper police investigation. It was actually part of a criminal cover-up. And the fact that they, to this day, still haven't sent me my crime report, even though I requested it from them, shows just how embarrassed they are about the details of what happened. But anyway, so the fact that it happened so quickly, within 20 minutes they started to launch into this program of just getting me out of the police station, not allowing me to talk to an officer, and then starting an intimidation, theater, to have me essentially warned off that if I try to pursue this, I'll be stamped with mental health. So that's now public on YouTube. It has been now spread far and wide. But what you see there is essentially this kind of intelligence agency or establishment mechanisms put into place to silence the victims of human experimentation or literally just sexual violence, and you will see that over and over. You will see the same dodgy things happen with people who report child sex abuse, right? Who would report ritual sex abuse, and many other things. And it's the same over and over. The police, instead of acting how they really should be acting, if it's really something that they've never heard about, they should be curious about it. But of course they have heard about it over and over. They are not curious about it. Instead, what they do is they try to take out the victim. They try to literally prevent a police record being filed, and so on and so on. So you can see it with your own eyes. It's quite public now. But so this is now the background, but keep in mind that the entire point of this program is discreditation. It's really to just disrupt people, disrupt their social circle, disrupt their marriage, leave them destitute, isolated, and then they can be just, their body can be shot into with these microwave weapons until they get the data. They can run their different brain mapping things and tune the algorithms on you, and then it's all done, and they have what they wanted. They don't care about you. They just drop you. Whatever happens to you, they don't care. Now, this seems to be how the intelligence agencies have operated for decades now, because we know victims who have been on these programs for decades. This is how it works. But now today, so this is now the background, so that you understand that what I'm telling you today is one very, very, very crucial, very, 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 very crucial aspect of this whole thing of setting people off, by torturing them, making them appear as out of control, as ludicrous, sectionable, essentially, because that's, if they section you, they have you in a contained environment, and then you can again be given drugs and experimented on, irradiated and experimented on, and so on. But what I've just experienced this morning, and this is really, really important, because I've heard about this, the first time I heard about this was through an interview with Dr. Barry Trower. And Dr. Barry Trower was asked, is it possible to trigger, emotions in people? And he said that is actually the easiest thing to trigger, because you can use a pencil beam, a microwave pencil beam, and really irradiate a gland inside their brain with this beam, and then cause uncontrollable anger, uncontrollable fear, cause lethargia, depression, any sort of emotions, because they're all steered with chemicals in our brain, with actual chemical processes, with hormones and so on. So if you stimulate or force a certain gland to start working under the, either under the heat or the irradiation, then you can set this off. So I knew that this concept exists, and it's quite easy to do, but I've never consciously experienced it. I mean, my husband and I had incredible rows over the last year whilst I was being, overtly microwaved. But every single time it felt like, oh, well, that's just the situation. However, this morning, we had an argument that was just out of this world, because he essentially left for work, came back because he forgot something, and I had locked the door already, leaving the key inside. And then when he came back, he realized he can't put his key in. This is like a trivial thing. He can't put his key in, he can't come in. So he rang the doorbell, and because he was in a rush and he was really impatient, he kind of did what guys sometimes do, which is, storm ring the bell. So that was not a problem. I was a bit, annoyed, as you are when you're stressed out by a bell. I didn't understand what this was about. He was annoyed because, he can't get back into his own house because the keys are locked, so, and he's in a rush. So that was this setup of the situation. And stuff like that happens in couples and normal domestic life all the time. So that in itself is nothing unusual. But what's really unusual was that when he came in, even though I had planned, because we had so much stress last year, we had a resolution that we're going to take everything as calmly as possible, and none of us are going to lose our mind over anything. But within moments, I got so angry for absolutely no good reason that I started screaming at him. And at first, I just expressed what I, was annoyed about, which is the fact that he just rang the doorbell. And it's just like, okay, I was about to climb into the shower. So, it's like, please give me a moment to get back out of the shower and open the door. I didn't expect you to come back. So this was, in any normal day, I would have been a bit miffed. He would have been a bit miffed. We would have just, said this stuff to each other, and then he would have been gone. But today, and this is what's so absolutely unusual, within moments I was uncontrollably furious. Just, and given that I have, survived an assassination attempt and have taken many, many other things that MI5 and the German intelligence have thrown at me in my stride, I do not typically get upset about people ringing a doorbell a bit too often. But anyway, within moments I felt like I just couldn't control myself. And this is essentially it. You're just there and you're just angry, and literally it's this feeling of, I want to take the other person apart, and you don't even know why. I mean, I didn't want to actually harm my husband physically, but I was so angry I started screaming at him at the top of my voice. And of course, as it is in arguments, you start, accusing each other of the total integral of all offenses ever since, you know each other. But what was extremely unusual was just the uncontrollable anger in it. And it went on and on and on for about 20 minutes. And it was literally just, it's basically the fact that I just couldn't control myself at all. And okay, there's frustration and I've been shot at and we're under a lot of stress. But then frankly, I've been under continuous non-stop terror and stress for 5 years, and for the entirety of last year, I've been under, an actual torture victim, physical mutilation, non-stop for a year. And frankly, if I haven't flipped like that months ago, I'm not going to flip now. So this has nothing to do with that. It was literally something fundamentally different. And one of the things I want to express is just this utter helplessness I felt in it. I looking back, and even in the moment, there was absolutely nothing I could have done to switch off my anger. But, and this is now the really, really important thing to know, because there was a moment when this broke, actually. There was a moment, and before I get on to that, I also would like to express that what happened is that literally I spent, and this is why my voice is slightly hoarse now, because I spent literally 20 minutes screaming my head off to my husband. I still have to go and apologize to the neighbors, but I was furious, and then he was pretty annoyed as well, and of course he gets annoyed because he's in a rush, and then his wife starts acting up like that and starts screaming at him, so he got defensive. He launched into the argument as well. But in the end, I was so angry at him, I literally started throwing things at him. Okay, nothing hard, throwing just like, soft things at him. Nothing, not like a hammer or something like that. But still, it was this absolutely uncontrollable anger at whoever's in front of you. Even though I love my husband very dearly, I felt this at no point did I want to physically harm him. But I was close enough to then, throw stuff at him just out of anger. So what then happened is that, in the end, we wound this down, and, it had different phases, but in the end, he, I was fine again, and then he left for work. And then what happened is that I then finally managed to climb into the shower. And as soon as I climbed into the shower, I noticed something that is extremely unusual, which is as soon as I turned on the hot water, I felt that the top of my head and bits of my left-hand side here were burning. They literally felt burned. And it's the situation of, I'm not sure if you ever had that, you burn your hand on an oven plate or something. And then, as long as you put cold water on it, it's fine. But then later, if your skin is damaged and later on you wash your hands with maybe lukewarm or warm water, you suddenly notice that it hurts in the area and it feels burned. And the warm water sets it off again. Well, this was exactly what I felt. And the other thing is that during the argument, there was a moment when literally I felt as if something was just hammering the top of my head here. during the argument. And then it was literally climbing into the shower, a totally different sensation, and that of having the top of my head actually feeling burnt under hot water, and also the side of my head. I mean, the side was really hard to tell because it just kind of felt weird, and it's not as intense as on the top of my head. But I think that the top of my head, somewhere here, and the side have been microwaved very intensely. And this is extremely scary, because it would explain why I just went off on one like that. It certainly would explain that. And I mean, other victims have reported mood changes and anger and things like that. But today, I actually, as far as I mean, I couldn't see anything on my skin that actually, you can't see anything. It's not burned here anywhere, not even under the hair. I couldn't actually notice anything. But that doesn't, as we know, this is not how these weapons work. They do penetrate deeply. And also, again, that it's just this side and the top and nothing in between. So here there's nothing, and around there's nothing. It's literally just an area at the top and an area somewhere like diffusely here. Again, that it's two areas kind of underlines what I've been saying all along, which is that if you really want to focus in on one point or small area, taking one beam is kind of hard, because you can't tell where along the beam the energy is going to be deposited. So you ideally use two beams, and where they overcross, you have the heat deposition, or the deposition of microwave energy. But I have to say that this was really, really scary, and first of all, I want to make it absolutely clear that this is, today it happened, this morning. I'm 100% convinced that I was set off using microwave weapons and microwave beams. And that this is one form of evidence that in this instance I actually managed to gather. If you then, have pour hot water over yourself, your the lower levels of your dermis might be damaged, the nerves might be damaged, even though the top layer doesn't show any burn marks, and you can set it off by just using hot water. So you can tell if and where you might have been just irradiated. So maybe that's a tip for the victims, just for yourself to check, was that me just now, or have I just been set off? And then, really, really important, what to do about it, because I actually discovered something that you can do about it, or rather my husband discovered it, because fortunately, he had the presence of mind during the argument, whilst I was literally screaming at him on the top of my voice, to have the presence of mind to think, hang on, this is really unusual, we don't really want this. And he did the absolute complete opposite of what anybody would do in that moment, because he literally took a step back, and instead of engaging in the argument and, shouting back or arguing back, as, he started off, as everybody would when they get attacked and suddenly screamed at, he literally calmed down completely, and he said, just come here, it's okay. And then he just pulled me and just gave me a hug and said, just calm down, it's okay. And that works. That really works, because suddenly your brain, whatever's being done to your brain, is being flooded by other sensory input that totally contradicts the situation. So first of all, your brain starts to process that and is not taking in the anger mode anymore, because it has external output, and that overrides whatever's going on internally, because it has to. This is how we evolved, because we have to take in whatever is happening in our environment because of predators, historically speaking. So external stimuli seem to overrule whatever's going on in you internally. But the other thing that really helps is actually sensory input, like actual touch. And him just, hugging me, not in a possessive, but just in a protective way, talking to me in a totally different tone of voice, and just, the stroking and calming totally overruled it. So actually in that minute, you're still really upset, and I felt this kind of like knocking of my anger against the other state, which was just, I just want to calm down, and I don't want this, and this kind of like an oscillatory pull, whereby you feel relieved, and at the same time the anger bubbles up again, and there's this kind of back and forth, but you can dampen it out. It's like eventually it just dies off. And then when he let me go and I took a step back, at first I was fine, and then I started screaming again. And it really just shows that you have to keep doing it, and you have to wait until this entire thing is over. Now, I really mention that and I emphasize it because I think if you're in a situation like that and you're being made to be really angry artificially, know that there are things you can do. You're not just helplessly at the mercy of these microwave beams that they are punching into your skull. There are things where you can override it in the moment and actually de-escalate the situation. So if you're alone and you don't have anybody to hug you, who knows who's on the inside, and can just, calm you down. I don't think you need that. I think you can also put in music into your ears, whatever sensory input you can put into yourself that contradicts it. So listen to happy music should do it, because it goes into your brain through your ears, right? A different input. Then do something you find pleasing, stroke a cat or stroke your dog, or eat an ice cream. Eating chocolate is also always very good. But do something else that for the moment totally overrules the sensory input. And I think this is key because these electromagnetic weapons are not going to go away. So I think this is really important to know how to combat it if it's done to you, because this is a military assault. These are military weapons, and you will have to somehow weather that and to get through it. And there's another instance where exactly the same seemed to have worked, and that is I think I spoke publicly about one incident where I was at my parents' house, and we just had a calm conversation about what's being done to me. And my parents are still, at the time, were extremely incredulous, and then said, listen, if they are attacking you at night, please wake us up, because we want us to be there. We want to see, can we feel the beam or something? And we had a very calm conversation. Then we went to bed, and some half hour later, in bed, I was again, like every night in Germany, I was attacked. And this happened months and months ago. I mean, we're talking now the beginning of last year, or spring last year. And then I went upstairs. My parents are very accommodating people, so they'd been in bed for maybe half an hour. And then I said, I am being attacked. Can you come down? And my parents said, yeah, sure, we're coming. And then I went ahead downstairs. And then by the time my parents came down, my mother was already furious and out of her mind with anger. And briefly after that, my father came down, who was equally angry. And given that they themselves had just half an hour before told me that this is how I should act, it was, for that reason out of character. But also my parents are the most accommodating people. And they would never ever, you can wake them in the middle of the night at 3 a.m, it doesn't matter. They are totally accommodating. So that was also not the reason for the anger. And then we ended up in an argument. I moved into the kitchen, and then there was a scene where my parents had just worked themselves up into anger and were screaming, but simultaneously both of them screaming at me in total anger. And that was so unusual that time I'd literally, as I was just cornered, I just wanted to get out of this entire situation, and they act so weird that I just took a step to the left, and I just jumped out of that little corner. And then I just stood right next to them, sideways, looking at them. And what happened is that both of them continued screaming at the empty room where I'd stood before. So I'd never seen anything like that. But they just continued both to just talk and shout at the point in the room where I had stood, and I wasn't standing any longer. And I don't know for how long this was continuing, but I was just standing there, and the time it takes you to think, oh my God, is this really happening? Is this for real? What's going on? But eventually, what I just did out of instinct is I just reached out, and my mom was fairly close to me, and I just reached out and I stroked her arm, and I said, Mom, it's okay. Everything's fine. And it was just as soon as I touched her and stroked her and said this, my mother's expression just changed. Her eyes were really wide open before then, just literally like that, shouting. And then her eyes dropped down to normal. And she said, oh, it's okay. And then she reached out to my dad and told him to shut up, like my mom does. And then the entire situation was resolved, and my dad also, snapped out of it. But again, it seems to be touch and talking in a really calm voice. So you have to have at least one or two sensory inputs that utterly contradict of whatever's being done to them. Because I'm convinced that this was being done to them. It's utterly out of character for my parents, as much as what happened this morning was utterly out of character for me. And I do know for a fact that all the time I have these beams into my skull. I mean, now I'm sitting here, and from the neighbor, who I keep talking about, there's essentially 2 doors and a window leading to a house, where I know I'm being shot at from, and this side of my head is being shot at now. So I do know that all the time I'm being attacked. But what I've experienced this morning was something else entirely. And anyway, so I just wanted to share this. It's a warning to other victims about, that this can happen to you. They seem to experiment with setting this off. And the fact that, Dr. Barry Trow worked on this, decades ago, and it's public knowledge. So setting you off is not the experiment. It's probably setting you off and then mapping your brain into action remotely and things like that they are now experimenting on, using the setting off just as a tool, as part of another bigger experiment that checks more sophisticated stuff. These are war crimes. What they're doing are crimes against humanity. But the intelligence agencies are utterly out of control. They continue doing these experiments. You have heard my public appeals. They can't stop themselves. And today they did this despite 2 public appeals to the heads of the BND and MI5. They can't stop themselves. They continue this bullshit. And that's what they've done this morning. But I want you to take away from this that this can happen to you. You can be made irrationally angry. I advise you to have, if you're alone, have an iPod or an MP3 player with you at all times with the happiest music ever, and put it in your ears. Just do that. Have a chocolate bar on you, or whatever you need to do to calm down. If you have a cat or pet, grab it, stroke it, calm down, and if you feel that you've been set off artificially, climb into a shower, pour hot water over yourself, and see if you can feel burning anywhere on your head. Check. If you can, write it down in a logbook. I, for one, am now under oath certifying that this happened to me, that I believe that this is really how they have done it. And, if you experience the same, that's already enough evidence, right, that this is how it's done. Plus, you also have the statement by Dr. Barry Trow. You can Google, you can find him on YouTube as well as I can. It's one of these long interviews with him where he explains how this is done. It's on the public record, so you can also find that about pencil beams and setting off glands in the human brain. But I also want to certify that, yes, I also managed to lose control over myself. I am not a violent person at all. I'm not a violent person. I'm not a malicious person, and nevertheless, I was made so irrationally angry. And also, I should say that I'm a very, very calm person, even under full-blown, MI5 assault. So, it's not like I'm losing my nerves very quickly. But I want to certify now that today, yes, I was set off like that with uncontrollable anger. And what I did was literally just, throw things. Just stuff that was around me, right? I think a bag and a shoe that I threw at my husband, which, he caught. Being the sporty guy he is, fortunately, I can't actually do any damage to this guy. But it's not that I wanted to. It's just that the overbubbling anger that I really believe has been induced in me today actually led me to do that. And, as I said, I think this was done to me, and as they were doing it for 20 minutes, right? So for 20 minutes my head was irradiated, and after 20 minutes of this, I have to say, you do get extremely angry, right? So, heck knows what they're doing to other people, but I just want you to say, I just want you to know that this is one way how they can try to break up your marriage, your social circle, by just making you act up either with extreme anger or extreme fear. And today I've experienced extreme anger. already when I was preparing my court case, the high court case in just in the summer, I have experienced just crippling despondency out of a sudden. Just it's not depression, it's just crippling despair as I was just trying to prepare my court case, and that was also out of character. So I for sure can certify that they induce these emotions, in a targeted fashion, in a very tactical way. So anyway, so this is now on public record. If you think you've experienced the same thing, do please refer people to this video. I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. My details are online. And also for all those people who watch this, if they're wondering why I have this in the background, it's not because I'm mad, and it's not because I like aluminium. It's because behind this wall there's a microwave emitter, and every single time I try to take this off and work at my desk, normally the back of my head was itchy burned. So, it has been quite, I think, several months since I tried to take this off. Maybe today I do try to take it off, and I actually make a point out of taking it off, because I really would like to see the prints behind there again and have my office return to normal. But as it is, it's actually better. I can work at my desk without having the back of my head cooked by these things. And aluminium or metal in general is the best way to protect yourself against microwave attacks. So, for example, if you have, a baked potato and you put it into the oven, and you don't want the baked potato, or for example, even a chicken, you don't want it to burn, you can put aluminium on top, and what it does, it will reflect essentially the infrared, right? So infrared electromagnetic radiation, the heat and other, the actual heat in the air will still hit the chicken, which is why it actually cooks, but it will not burn the skin. Okay, so it is about the infrared radiation burning the skin. That's why you can put aluminium on a baked potato, on chicken, and then cook it gradually just through, the heat in the air in the oven. And this is what this is about. It's about metal blocking out electromagnetic radiation. Okay, so this is also why you should never ever put aluminium into the microwave, because what it will do is it will reflect back the aluminium, and essentially just start a fire inside your microwave, right? Because the microwave will just, instead of being absorbed by the food, will be bouncing back and through the cladding and through the opening where the microwaves are coming in, and then you have essentially you will melt this device and set it on fire. So this is why it's aluminium. That's also why this sort of stuff is on all the moon landers, because you've got a lot of radiation in outer space, and this stuff actually works. It is the cheapest, the lightest, and the easiest to use protection against electromagnetic radiation. And that's why this is on my wall, because I am one of the victims. So I hope this helps. I hope you find a way to actually protect yourself against these attacks. I mean, when they induce despondency, like they did with me in before my court hearing, my third court hearing, that is crippling, but it's not dangerous in a sense that, so what? Then you just sit in a corner being very scared and very, sad. And as long as you don't kill yourself, from sadness, that's not dangerous. But anger is something else, because it's an active mode, and you can be made to attack other people, attack your family, attack your loved ones, even though you don't really want to, And my advice is, have other sensory input. If you can tell your family that this might happen to you, ask them to give you a hug. It really works. Just hug, contact, or if it's not a person who is fine with giving you a hug for some reason, also just stroking your arm. Any sort of physical contact that is just calm and not threatening. So grabbing your arm is not a good idea, I don't think, but stroking, anything that contradicts the situation, happy music, chocolate, anything that you can do in the moment to just step out of this. And if you can, try to leave the house. So instead of getting extremely angry, just say, oh, I'm sorry, I just need to step outside. Put in music, grab a chocolate bar, leave the house, go for a walk, see how you feel then, right? Because I don't think it's true, or they will be, tracking you with satellites and irradiating you at the same time. I think that's a bit too, too complicated for them. I don't think they will do that. So as soon as you do that, you're out of the beam, you're out of this controlled environment, and then, start again, come back and see, do you have exactly the same reaction when you come back, when, this topic is raised? Because then maybe you should also take your entire family and discuss the topic somewhere else, in a restaurant or in a park or somewhere. So do not be drawn into this, because it is devastating. So anyway, I survived this yet another attack. I mean, gosh, these psychopathic things that they do. Yeah, I also have to say, just screaming at your husband for 20 minutes is also surprisingly therapeutic, so I feel extremely calm now. I wanted to make some more videos explaining how this entire system could have run out of control. But anyway, I hope it was helpful to your victims, and yes, please help us have this entire system shut down, because it is a crime against humanity. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.